What if the woman who made the whole world laugh was silently living through heartbreak? Most of us couldn't survive. Before Carol Burnett became a comedy legend, before the standing ovations and Emmy statues, she was a child, standing in a Hollywood alley, listening to her parents drink themselves into silence. It's a story that begins with a question you'll want to stick around for. Why did America's beloved Carol Burnett refuse to ever rewatch the sketch that made her famous? That simple mystery, one hidden line in her past, holds the key to everything that unfolds. From the start, we sense a gap, an unspoken secret that demands unraveling. The moment we follow her journey, you'll feel the pull to know what happens next and why it shattered her so deeply. Carol's story starts in a dusty little Texas town in 1933, but it's not sunshine and easy smiles. From infancy, she learned that bedtime stories could wait. At her house, the bottles came first. Her father drifted in and out of movie theaters where he worked, unable to stay. Her mother was there too, but only just. By the time Carol was toddler-old, the word unwanted had already etched itself into her daily life. It was in that unsettling space that she discovered something powerful: laughter. It became her shield, the only way to survive. At age 7, she and her grandmother, Mabel White, who stepped in when no one else could, escaped to Hollywood, but not the glamorous version in movies. They landed in a rundown boarding room, sharing a tiny space with other hopeful dreamers, and those just barely holding on. Surrounded by people hanging onto scraps, Carol felt the weight of poverty in every meal skipped. Yet in that very emptiness, Mabel offered her something far richer: love that didn't demand perfection. And so, in that cramped room with broken souls all around, Carol found safety. That security sparked a remarkable invention. Carol created an imaginary twin, Karen, confident, beautiful, the complete opposite of her shy self. She'd dash onto the fire escape, change her clothes and hair, and re-enter the room as Karen, who would charm everyone. Then she'd vanish, reappear again as Carol. The adults believed in Karen almost as much as they believed in their own fragile hopes, which speaks volumes about Carol's early performance craft and the desperate need for joy that surrounded her. Every Saturday, Carol and Mabel slipped into the local theater. 25 cents a ticket, over 10% of their weekly income. But in the dark, surrounded by glowing screen stars, Carol tasted a world of beauty and order. She lived for those moments until reality intruded. They couldn't afford basic items like toilet paper, so they'd swipe it from the theater bathrooms. No shame, just survival. At 7, Carol already understood true hunger, and not just for food. Then came the moment that changed everything. In that same theater, she heard Tarzan's roar echo across the screen. It wasn't just a yell, it was electricity. At home, she began mimicking it obsessively. It wasn't an attempt to be funny, it was practice. What would later be her trademark in front of packed audiences began as one girl's game, something that gave her power she'd never felt before. She kept growing, and by high school, the stage of journalism beckoned. She dreamed of telling stories like her mother, who loved to write but never had the chance. UCLA was the goal, but tuition cost $50, about $600 in today's terms, and she didn't have it. It looked like the dream would end before it began. But then, almost like a miracle, a stranger paid her fee. No identity, no strings, just enough to change her fate. UCLA turned out to be the biggest surprise. She signed up for journalism, but an elective theater course flipped her world upside down. Vulnerable, shy Carol disappeared. In her place stood someone loud, alive, undeniably funny. Professors and classmates took notice immediately. She could sing, act, deliver one-liners, all in a single breath. Journalism didn't feel like enough anymore, and she didn't hesitate. She switched majors. It was a bold gamble, but it was the first time she'd ever dared to dream instead of just survive. By the end of freshman year, she was crowned Most Promising Newcomer in UCLA's theater program. It wasn't just a title, it was a prophecy. Suddenly, doors swung open. She got better roles, and mentor after mentor recognized the spark she carried. The spark you simply couldn't fake. Fast forward a bit. She's working as an usherette for 65 cents an hour, scrubbing floors after classes. One night in 1954 at a party in San Diego, she's stuffing hors d'oeuvres in her purse to take home when a sharply dressed stranger approaches. He's no producer or agent. He's a shipbuilder millionaire. He hears her story. $43 tuition still outstanding for New York Dreams, and for her boyfriend, Don Soyan. Within moments, he offers them $1,000 each, but with 3 conditions. Don't reveal his name, use the money only for their move, and when they make it, help others like him had helped them. Suddenly, that shy girl and her boyfriend were packing for New York with $2,000, over $20,000 in today's money. They didn't know anyone there. They didn't have a plan, but somehow Carol recalled, "I didn't know enough to be scared." They checked into the Algonquin Hotel, $9 a night, which was still far beyond their means. She hit rock bottom some nights, calling home in tears. Then a radio bulletin. A hurricane named Carol was heading northeast. She interpreted it as fate, a strange sign telling her she should stay, and she did. New York introduced her to the Rehearsal Club, a boarding house filled with young women chasing art and hope. For $18 a week, she traded a cot in a crowded bedroom and a single bathroom for a community that buzzed with ambition. She worked nights as a hat check girl and spent her days auditioning. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. In March 1955, she and the women put on a showcase. Marlene Dietrich, not an easy audience, showed up. And Carol stunned the room with a ridiculous satirical love song about Secretary of State John Foster Dulles. It was absurd, it was bold, and it was her breakout moment. That song carried her onto The Jack Parr Show, then Ed Sullivan. On January 6, 1957, she stepped out with her heart racing, but by the end she had the audience roaring. She returned in August with the Foxtrot parody of Puppy Love, sealing her status as New York's next big comedy star. From small roles on shows like Paul Winchell's to supporting Buddy Hackett in Stanley, she kept grinding until 1959. Landing the lead in Once Upon a Mattress felt like destiny disguised as happenstance. She was cast as Princess Winifred, a soft-spoken, klutzy marsh princess who shattered every fairy tale stereotype. Overnight, she became Broadway's darling. The show burst into popularity, and her Tony nomination confirmed what the audience already knew. Carol Burnett was a force. 5 years to the day after that anonymous benefactor sent her money, she and Don Soyan mailed back the full $2,000 on June 22nd, 1959. The man vanished without a word. She was earning $500 a week, an amount she later called like hitting the jackpot. What began as a camp production in May of '59 surprised critics and audiences alike. It opened off-Broadway, transferred to the Alvin Theater, and eventually crisscrossed 4 venues, lasting 470 performances. The critics may have turned up their noses at first, but theatergoers showed up by the thousands. When Carol left the production in June 1960, the show collapsed within a week. Her replacement lasted 8 performances before it mercifully shuttered. Carol had become irreplaceable. Next came television's golden era. From 1959 to 1962, she lit up The Gary Moore Show. Her cleaning lady character stole hearts and earned Carol her first Emmy by 1962. But behind the laughs, she was crafting what would become her signature: unscripted Q&A warm-ups with live audiences that laid the foundation for the Carol Burnett Show's iconic audience interaction. That era set the stage for her next epic moment: Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall. CBS executives were hesitant. Julie Andrews wasn't yet a household name, and Carol was already omnipresent on TV. Then luck intervened. One night, Carol struggled into a taxi after an event. She joked that a truck might pick her up. Moments later, a truck driver stopped and offered her a lift. CBS took it as a sign and greenlit the special. The special swept 3 major awards, including an Emmy and a Rose, and the soundtrack even cracked the Billboard Top 100 at number 85. Then, the watershed moment. On September 11th, 1967, The Carol Burnett Show debuted. If television had been glass, that glass shattered. For 11 straight seasons until March 29th, 1978, the show pulled in around 30 million weekly viewers. It wasn't a hit, it was a cultural juggernaut. Time magazine listed it among the 100 greatest shows, TV Guide ranked it 17th, and Variety at 23rd. But those accolades only scratched the surface. This wasn't just entertainment. Carol rewrote the script for women in comedy. At a time when variety shows were male-dominated, she stepped forward and owned her stage. The show ran reliably no matter the day or time slot. Awards became routine. 25 primetime Emmys across writing, choreography, musical material, and Best Variety Series. Harvey Korman snagged 4 Emmys in 69, 71, 72, and 74 for supporting performance. Tim Conway earned 4 as well, 3 for acting, 1 for writing. The final season went out with a bang, clinching even more awards. On top of that, Carol herself won Golden Globes as Best Actress in a comedy or musical in both 1977 and 1978. The People's Choice Award for Favorite Variety Program came home 3 years running. Yet despite that glow, the backstage story was more raw. In her 7th season, Harvey Korman nearly walked out. It was a rehearsal week with guests Tim Conway and Petula Clark. Harvey was irritable, an emotional storm brewing under the surface. Carol had always let things slide, but not this time. After taping, she confronted him. His answer was brutal. "I'm just not happy here." He slammed his dressing room door. It felt like the end. But Harvey came back over the weekend and begged for another chance. Carol agreed with one demand. "Monday morning, I want to see you skipping and whistling down the hallway." He showed up with a smile. Carol laughed and had a plaque affixed to his door. "Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky." He stayed through season 10. Then there was Tim Conway, the wildcard who reinvented spontaneity. Conway's rule? Never give it your all in rehearsals. Save the magic for live. And, oh, it was magic. His elephant story sketch became legend. As he spun out a ridiculous tale about a circus elephant, Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke struggled to stay in character. By the end, Vicki cracked first. "Are you sure that little is through?" Even Conway couldn't contain his laughter. These moments, unscripted, unpredictable, were the soul of the show. Viewers didn't just watch, they lived it. But not every moment was laugh out loud. In 1977, during a recurring sketch called The Family, Carol played Eunice Higgins in a sketch known as The Gong Show. Normally comedic dysfunction, this time it was stark reality. Eunice believed her moment would come on a talent show, only to be mocked mercilessly. No slapstick, no punchline, just heartache. By the time the camera pulled away from her tear-streaked face, silence filled the set. That episode made critics weep, and viewers were stunned. But Carol never watched it again. In a 2010 interview, she admitted she couldn't bear to re-watch Eunice's grief. It struck too close to her own poverty-worn past, with dreams laughed at and hopes unfulfilled. The impact was so profound it launched a TV movie in 1982, Eunice, and the sitcom Mama's Family. Carol walked away from the spin-off, feeling it drifted too far from the pain and truth of that original sketch. Behind the laughter, her life often mirrored her art. Heartbreak, family conflict, and earlier struggles haunted her. And at the center of it all stood Don Soyan, her college sweetheart and first husband. Their relationship was woven into every high and low, but that's where we pause this chapter. But the truth behind the laughter has never been harder, but more necessary to share. Don Soyan, whom Carol married in 1955, had ambitions of Broadway stardom of his own. They were young, idealistic, perfect on paper. But heartbreak struck early when Don's daughter passed away. He changed, collapsed under grief. Carol soared while Don struggled. By Christmas Day 1959, the marriage unraveled. They divorced in 1962. Don battled depression and alcohol until his death at age 62 in 1990, never reaching the spotlight he'd once chased. That abrupt shift was a cruel twist, her dreams coming true as his dream faded. And yet it laid groundwork for the next chapter. Shortly after, Carol crossed paths with Joe Hamilton, an Emmy-winning TV producer who had staged her Carnegie Hall concert in 1962. They married in 1963, blending their families, his 8 children and her 1 married daughter, and their babies, Carrie, Jody, and Aaron. By 1965, a miscarriage rocked them. Their home brimmed with 10 kids and swirling pressures. Joe produced The Carol Burnett Show, winning 5 Emmys, but the burden wore on them all. Love and ambition collided, and in 1976 the family's veneer cracked when a notorious tabloid falsely claimed Carol was intoxicated at a public dinner with Henry Kissinger. It wasn't just damaging, it cut deep because Carol had long spoken out against alcohol misuse. She sued for $1.6 million. After 5 grueling years, she was vindicated by evidence showing she hadn't been drunk, but the final settlement was a modest approximately $200,000. It wasn't the money, it was about truth and protecting her integrity, and it marked a turning point in tabloid accountability. Still, the most devastating battles unfolded in her living room. From 1976 to 1979, her daughter Carrie spiraled into drug addiction. Cocaine, mushrooms, Quaaludes. She later admitted she needed distance from being Carol Burnett's daughter. Each attempt at rehab ended in withdrawal and heartbreak. Carol made agonizing decisions, letting Carrie go away to save her, even when it meant Carrie hated her. "You have to love them enough to let them hate you," she later said. They were estranged for over a year, fractured and silent, and yet she never stopped fighting. When Carrie finally returned sober at 17, it felt miraculous. Carrie soon landed a breakout role on Fame, proving her own talent. They wrote Hollywood Arms together, a play based on survival and love. But before it reached the stage, Carrie passed away in 2002 at just 38, her life cut short by lung cancer that spread to her brain. Carol called the loss her greatest hurt, but pressed on, saying, "I owed it to Carrie." By then, Carol's marriage to Joe had ended in 1984. His death from cancer came in 1991, but she wasn't finished finding love. In 2001, at age 68, she married Brian Miller, a man 23 years her junior whom she met in the late 1990s during a performance in Long Beach. Just 2 months into their marriage, Carrie died. Brian became Carol's anchor, steadying her through the grief and guiding her to complete Hollywood Arms. Their bond hasn't faltered since. The story didn't end with grief, though. In the 2000s and 20s, when her youngest daughter Erin faced addiction and lost custody of her son, Carol and Brian stepped forward again. They took temporary guardianship of their grandson Dylan in July 2020, protecting him from an unsafe environment and suicide threats. Once more, she traded her career spotlight for gestures unseen by the public, doing tough, personal work that went beyond the stage. Even at advanced age, Carol's career arc refused to soften. In 2022, at 91, she made a chilling cameo in Better Call Saul's final season. As Marion, an elderly woman gently uncovering Saul Goodman's truths via Ask Jeeves, she delivered a single sentence: "I trusted you." That shifted the scene. A moment so haunting, Vince Gilligan revealed Saul considered silencing her. Carol's presence commanded gravity, and that performance earned her a nomination as the oldest ever for Outstanding Supporting Actress. This was not a one-off. In 1997, she won an Emmy for her role on Mad About You, proving she could adapt from physical comedic timing to contemporary sitcom subtlety. Her voice work in The Trumpet of the Swan, 2001, and Horton Hears a Who, 2008, reached global audiences, with the latter grossing $298 million on an $85 million budget. Broadway welcomed her back in 1999 with Sondheim's Putting It Together, and in 2022, Palm Royale saw her at 91, deftly inventing improvised, gibberish dialogue, earning her record-breaking Emmy honors. So what does her life teach us financially? Carol Fuller. Burnett's current net worth is estimated between $40 to $45 million. She's owned a 1976 Rolls-Royce, cabin like a private jet in leather and wood tones. Her real estate footprint spans Ocean View Estates, a $2 million Montecito mansion, a Trump Tower apartment sold in 2008 for $5.58 million, a Wilshire condo listed for $4.2 million in 2022, and sold for $3.7 million in 2023, plus a Santa Fe compound once listed at $6 million. She's aligned with durable assets, real estate over flashy depreciating toys, and prioritized legacy, guardianship, family, and reputation. She buys insurance, invests in voice roles, Broadway revivals, and TV cameos, maintaining relevance into her 90s. Lesson: diversify income, protect your name, anchor value in authenticity, and use wealth to safeguard what matters most. From poverty to prosperity, from spotlight to shadow, Carol Burnett's life teaches us that real success isn't just the laughs. It's staying true, giving love, and standing tall when the world looks away. Her story ends not with a final curtain, but with a question. In a world chasing fame, what does it truly mean to live a life worth laughing and living for? If this story moved you, share your favorite Carol moment in the comments.